I'm Vivi. My job is to read books from every country in the world, written by a woman or a non-binary person, just no men. Here are all the countries I've read from so far, and can you spot an issue with that list? Because I see an issue with that list. There's no country from Africa. I hate myself. But let's not worry, we're gonna fix it. Today we're fixing it. I'm just gonna do countries from Africa on this week because I had a hyper focus on it, and honestly I wanted to read a few more books just to make sure I give good recommendation and not just like I read one random book. It was alright. Starting off strong with Egypt, I read Woman at Point Zero by Nawal El-Saadawi. My mind is blown every time I read an old book and I'm like, how is this still current? This is sad, but also like, wow. Nawal El-Saadawi goes into topics that we somehow still consider taboo today, and this is the story of a prostitute in Egypt, and it starts off with her in prison, and Nawal El-Saadawi has been to prison herself, but Firdouz, the main character in the book, she's in prison for killing a man and she's condemned to death penalty, and we're kind of walk through her life and what got her to where it is, a narration of part coming of age but part political discussion, which I just think it's like top notch. And it is a fictional book but based on real events. So Nawal El-Saadawi was conducting sociological interviews with women in prison, and this was one of the interviews, but a lot of things have been changed in it because confidential information. What made this book for me though is Firdouz's internal dialogues and narrations, and just her reaching her own conclusions, challenging men in power, being a revolutionary, challenging the system, always speaking her mind, and some quotes that are so powerful even today that I thought I'm extremely radical, but then I was like, oh damn, somebody was doing this way before and they are more radical than I am. And I'll give one quote from the book that kind of stuck with me. I am not a criminal, I am a woman, only a man can be a criminal, which kind of got me like, ooh damn. But yeah, women kind of react to violence. And it did piss me off that I've seen some comments from men saying that, well, this is a traumatized woman and how her life made her hate men, but I think it's more of a commentary on society and politics and the status quo that we all live through, not so much about this one incident, because this is still a relatable story, although it's like Woman at Point Zero. Why is it relatable then? Explain. Next up we're going to Somalia, and I have a physical book for the first time to show, and this is Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth by Warsan Shire. This is a very small poetry book, but it's fantastic. I think I found my new favorite poet actually, and honestly I'm just gonna give a couple quotes from it because I'm not gonna do it justice if I just explain. I have my mother's mouth and my father's eyes, on my face they are still together. And I'm going at the end of the book with this one. To my daughter I will say, when the men come, set yourself on fire. I just think it's really powerful. I don't think I'm doing it justice, but Warsan Shire has some YouTube videos with her reading her own poetry, so I'm going to link those as well if you want to watch her read her own poetry, because it's absolutely fantastic. It's stories about being a refugee, it's stories about war, and it's accessible and it's easy to read and it's powerful. It made me cry. It's such a short book. How did it make me cry? I don't know, but I like feels, so this was fantastic. I highly recommend. Next up we're going to Nigeria, and Nigeria has a lot of English published books published in English. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I've not read enough to make an informed choice given the amount of books published and the amount I've seen other people reviewing from Nigeria. But the one that I did read and I thought it's very good, so I would recommend it, is Whites on Race and Other Falsehoods by Otega Wagaba. Hopefully. Names will be a struggle through the entire series. I am really sorry. And it's very much a recent book published during the pandemic. It focused a lot on the events that started Black Lives Matter during the pandemic. It explains systemic racism in really good ways. It's also a really short book, so it's so accessible, it's quick. I don't know, I just really like books that explain things simply. Next up we're going to Zimbabwe with Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Damgarenga. I had a little bit of a journey with this book because I am not a big fan of fiction, but also I realized that I'm gonna have to read fiction for a lot of these countries if I can't find anything that's non-fiction. And I did struggle a little bit in the beginning with this book. I found it a bit boring, I couldn't really get into the characters, and I was very much like, why isn't this a memoir? I want this to be a memoir. But that is very much me, and me having unrealistic standards. So the story is about a little girl in Zimbabwe that wants to go to school. She just wants to go to school. Zimbabwe was called Rhodesia at the time after Cecil Rhodes. I hope I get his name wrong, which was the primary colonizer of Zimbabwe, and he basically renamed the country after himself, which is like fucked up. And why was I taught nothing in school? I don't know. The book is narrated from the point of view of a child, which I found unreliable because I don't trust children. I don't know what's real and what's not, and what the child sees as a big deal and what really is a big deal. And especially being in a political context that I don't have much knowledge of, it's kind of hard to know, is this just a child thing or is this like a real thing that's happening? And when it got interested was towards the end of the book, when I was almost done and finishing the book. It's when Tambu goes to school, and she goes to a Christian missionary white people school. So we kind of start to see the colonialism and the discrimination that happens in school, and I'm like, okay, this is finally getting interested. And also she grows older, so she finally starts to understand the political nuances. On the bright side, this book is a series, so there are other 2 books following up. And I'm hoping that as a teenager, as an adult, we will get more insight into the politics. But that might be just me. Maybe it's like just a great book as a fictional piece, and I just want to like make fiction non-fiction. So it's still a great book. I'm just being picky for no reason. I do feel like I was kind of baited though, because the blurb description of the book summarizes it as this novel brings the politics of decolonization theory and the energy of women's rights, and I was sold. Like, that's exactly my thing, but it's fiction, and it's gonna be a child most of the times narrating about child things, so which are still important things. I need to shut up. And I think embarrassingly that's about it, because I'm currently reading Transcendent Kingdom for Ghana, which is also kind of fiction-y, so the fiction thing will be a struggle in this reading challenge. So I had to take a break and read a couple non-fiction books to recharge. So that being said, if you have non-fiction recommendations for Africa, do let me know, because the fiction might not be for me, and I don't want to push myself to keep reading fiction, because I'm just gonna not enjoy it and review it poorly, and then I'm the problem, it's me. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!